Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. Hey, listen, you ever wonder what happens when the King of Monsters has the ultimate flop? Some of the most embarrassing moments? From unexpected defeats to cringeworthy encounters. Our big guy has had his share of fails that might make you see him in a different light. These moments reveal a surprisingly relatable side to the big monster that we all know and fear. Stick around as we're gonna look at some of the scenes throughout Godzilla's history that might make you laugh, wince, and maybe feel a bit sorry for the big guy. You're not gonna wanna miss this. From king to clown, Godzilla's mechanical beatdown. Today we're diving into one of Godzilla's most embarrassing moments. Remember when our big, scaly friend was the king of the monsters? Well, let me tell you about the time he got his crown knocked off in Godzilla vs. Kong. So picture this. Godzilla shows up in Hong Kong, he's roaring, he's feeling good about himself, fresh off of a beatdown of Kong after a 1v1, but then out of nowhere, Mecha Godzilla shows up to crash the party. So the fight that follows now is brutal. I mean, we all remember it. I mean, Mecha Godzilla's punching him, kicking him, just treating him like a ragdoll, the whole 9 yards. It's almost hard to watch. At one point, Mecha Godzilla's got Godzilla by the head. And boy, let me tell you, he went from looking like the king of monsters to the king of receiving ass kickings. I mean, it was like watching an armless person try to box Mike Tyson. And just when you think it can't get any worse, Mecha Godzilla has his own laser breath to counter Godzilla's atomic breath. And at this point, Godzilla's trying to keep up, but he really can't, and his roars are turning into whimpers very quickly. And the beating just keeps going on, and it gets gradually worse. I mean, at this point, you're kind of hoping somebody throws him the towel for Godzilla. And then here is the kicker. Just when things can't get any worse for the big guy, in comes Kong to save his ass. Yes, Godzilla's salvation at the hands of the very monster he just beat. Now you want to talk about insult to injury. It's one thing to get embarrassed by getting your ass handed to you. It's another thing to be saved by the monster whose ass you just kicked. But you know what? There could be a silver lining here when you look at it for the long haul. I mean, what brings monsters together than a beatdown? And of course, later on, even though these two would butt heads again, ultimately, they end up being an effective tag team. But I gotta say, the whole scene changed how I look at Godzilla. I mean, if nothing else, at least temporarily. I mean, here's a guy that you're used to seeing come into the city, taking on all corners and dominating, and then he just gets treated like a ragdoll. But in some crazy way, it kind of humanizes him. It's easy to forget that even the biggest, baddest monsters can have an off day. I mean, hell, we do. Even when we're at our best, there's gonna be days where it's just not gonna work out for us. So in that sense, we can relate to Godzilla. And the thing is, Godzilla does not give up. No matter how much the odds are stacked against him, Godzilla keeps fighting. And in the end, he managed to work with Kong to ultimately defeat Mecha Godzilla. They kind of came together like some sort of weird buddy cop movie. Stinky situation, Godzilla's smelly showdown. So you know how we just talked about Godzilla getting a beat down by Mecha Godzilla? That's nothing compared to what happened to him in 1971 when he faced Hedorah, the smog monster. Boy, this was a bit of a smelly situation. Now, Hedorah is not your typical monster, okay? The creative team must have really run out of some ideas, or maybe on the other hand, you can call it creative. But essentially, he's big, he's smelly, he's slimy. It looks like the creators just took all the pollution in the world, stuck it in a blender, mixed it up, threw legs on it, and tossed them out there because essentially that's what Hedorah is. Now, in this movie, Godzilla is effectively trying his best. Atomic breath, punching, whatever he could throw at Hedorah, but Hedorah's taking it like a big old tank full of crap. Just when you think Godzilla's having a hard time fighting this guy, then Hedorah pulls out his secret weapon. And guys, I'm not kidding when I say this, Hedorah just takes a shit on Godzilla. Yes, you heard that right. Probably would be the most infamous scene in this movie if not for the fact that something else occurs that we're gonna get to shortly. Now, can you imagine being Godzilla in this moment? Up to this point in your career, you're feared, you've beaten all sorts of monsters, things of that nature, and now you're sitting there covered in monster crap. I mean, it's like showing up to a job interview with toilet paper sticking out of your ass. Now, over the years, fans' reaction to this scene has been either they laugh and they find it comical or kind of gross. But the point is, this movie, Yoshimitsu Banno was trying to make a point about pollution and how it affects humanity. And I guess what he's trying to say is that much like Godzilla, when we step outside, we're essentially being shit on. Metaphor or not, it's kind of hard to fight a monster when you're covered in its poop. And then to make matters worse, despite all his efforts, every time Godzilla thinks he's got the upper hand, Hedorah just pulls out another gross trick. This whole fight has a weird mixture of horror and comedy. I mean, on one hand, you got Hedorah, this giant pollution monster mixed with poop and sludge and all this other crap, who's basically unkillable. And then on the other hand, you got Godzilla, the king of monsters, who looks like he just lost a fight with a septic tank. But there is a bonus embarrassing scene in this movie that has nothing to do with Godzilla being pooped on. It happens in between one of the many fights these two have throughout the movie. So Hedorah, trying to escape Godzilla, transforms and flies off. So what does Godzilla do? He tucks tail and flies after him. That's right, he takes off in what is the most comedic, embarrassing scene in Godzilla movie history, so much so that it overshadows the fact that Hedorah pinched the loaf on Godzilla earlier on. And let's be real, how do you come back from this? I mean, Godzilla has faced alien invasions, humans trying to kill him, other giant monsters, but being pooped on, that's a whole nother level of embarrassment. Never mind the fact that he actually flew in this movie, the first and only time, and with good reason. But once again, in a very weird way, here's another movie and another scene that kind of makes Godzilla more relatable. I mean, after all, we have days where life dumps on us, right? Alright, maybe not literally with crap or sludge, but the point I'm trying to make is that anybody can have a bad day, and he's entitled to have one, so should we. Size doesn't matter. Godzilla's tiny troubles. Alright folks, now you might think Godzilla's had it rough to this point, but you'd be wrong. How about two terrors that bring Godzilla down a peg? This one will make you question everything you know about kaiju battles. In Godzilla vs. Mothra, our scaly friend squares off against two caterpillars. Yes, you heard me, two caterpillars, but not of the backyard variety. These are deadly ninja caterpillars. Now you'd think, oh, simple solution. He's way bigger than them, just stomped him. And you know what? That probably would have worked if it wasn't for the fact that Godzilla stumbled into the worst terrain imaginable to fight these two. I mean, we're talking about rocks for them to hide behind, tunnels for them to crawl in, and essentially move unseen throughout the terrain to completely and utterly use guerrilla tactics against Godzilla. And as the fight progresses, Godzilla is just getting more confused, more frustrated. He's being covered in silk, he's thrashing around, he's blowing his atomic breath just aimlessly, trying to hit these two to no avail. And not for nothing, I gotta hand it to the filmmakers. Look, Godzilla vs. Mothra was my winner for Best of the Best in the Showa era. It is a very good movie. And the filmmakers did a great job selling the whole Underdog story, a true David and Goliath story. But you know, it's moments like these that make the Godzilla franchise so special. I mean, on one hand, you admire the guy for being the force of nature and being able to destroy anything that comes to his path. And then you get a movie like this where he gets schooled by two overgrown worms. And it's silly, but that's why we come back for it. That's why we love it. It puts a smile on our face, and that's just as effective as scaring us. And then, of course, the ending. Godzilla gets tangled up to a point where he can barely move and tumbles into the ocean. And there solidifies another embarrassing moment where Godzilla lost to two baby bugs. Now, some fans might find this hard to swallow. I mean, we're used to seeing Godzilla face off against much bigger and tougher threats. So it is a little out there to kind of sell the fact that he lost to basically two opponents that even by bad luck, he should have stepped on one of them by accident. But again, that's all part of the charm. It shows that in the world of kaiju, anything can happen, and that really at the end of it all, size really doesn't matter. Deep throat. So the next embarrassing moment doesn't happen once, but twice. In 1962, Godzilla and Kong had their first ever bout. And it didn't take Kong long to realize that Godzilla's atomic breath is pretty deadly. Now, Kong, being the very, very smart ape that he is, and also very cunning, he waited for his moment. He knew he had to strike before it. In fact, Kong preemptively made his move before Godzilla could even think about using his atomic breath. And let me tell you, at this point, the most embarrassing moment in Godzilla's existence was about to occur. Kong grabbed a large tree, railed back, and shoved it down Godzilla's throat. And boy, let me tell you, this was not gentle. And not only was it not gentle, Kong held it there for a little bit, kind of worked it in there and kind of shoved it in and out. And yeah, it was probably the most embarrassing moment ever for Godzilla, being owned by a tree and Kong basically manhandling the situation. As I said, he held it in there for a good few extra seconds. But let me ask you, what's more embarrassing than having a tree shoved down your throat once, having it happen twice? In 2021, when Godzilla and Kong were fighting in Hong Kong, Godzilla was swiftly charging up his atomic breath, and before you know it, Kong takes the blunt end of his axe and once again, down the throat of Godzilla. I guess Kong didn't think Godzilla took the gag order that serious the first time they met. Alright guys, we've seen Godzilla take some serious hits to his reputation. But are these hits actually making him more popular? A recent survey showed that 75% of Godzilla fans love this stuff. It's one of the reasons they keep coming back. They love the goofy, funny, and sometimes weird moments in the franchise. That's right, all those awkward situations are actually winning fans over. So what do you think? Does seeing Big G in these moments make you root for him more? I mean, Godzilla, it shows that Godzilla is powerful but not perfect. I mean, it's kind of relatable, right? I mean, have you ever had a day where everything went wrong, you were embarrassed, but for some weird reason, it kind of endears your friends to you more? Share your stories in the comment section, and let me know, does seeing Godzilla in these moments, his fails, make him more lovable? And also let me know if there's some other embarrassing moments that maybe I didn't mention, and yes, there are more, but maybe these are not among your favorite. Let me know in the comment section if you have a favorite moment where Godzilla's embarrassed. Maybe we'll make a part 2 to this because I know there's a lot more. In the end, even Godzilla can have some of the worst days of his life, but that doesn't take away or make him any less legendary. This is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.